Now before we proceed, let us see how are we going to calculate the costing. Though these are all tasks of basically the Azure architect, but let's look at it. The pricing calculator of Azure. Go to that and click on storage. And here you have storage added. So you can choose now. What is your region? East US 2. What type? What type of data you want to store? Let's say I want to store blob. Storage type, general purpose V2, which is most popular. LRS, you want to have cool or hot, you can decide. And what is important here is to be noted, you have got cost for capacity, that means for storage. If it is 1 TB of data, storage cost is $18.84 per month. This is all per month cost. And for 100,000 write operations, 10 lakhs, 100,000 write operations, you are paying $0.50. You are going to make use of your API, and through API you are going to put the blobs, you are going to write, store the blobs, read the blobs. These are write operations. Like that we have got read operations. It is $0.04. See, read is much cheaper when compared to write. Now to be noted, I am changing now from hot to cool, and you will see that the read and write operations cost has increased. What was 0.5 has now become 1, double, and what was 0.04 now has become 0.1, little more than double. That is why if you have frequent read and write, it is recommended to go for hot and not cool. And then you have got $10 as the cost of cool storage, whereas in hot you see the storage is $18, double. So one thing is what you have to very clearly decide, is your storage account used for only dumping data and rarely you are going to perform read and write, or you're not so concerned about the volume of storage but read and write are very frequent. Based on that, this access tier has to be changed. And take a call in the starting only, because changing again will cost you. And archive is the cheapest. You see here, $2, pretty cheap. But read is $50. Write is $1, but read is $50. So archive you are supposed to use only when you are using it for backup. I mean, you will store it and you may not even read it, but you are having your data as a backup. In those kind of cases, you should go for archive. So very cheap in cost of storage, very cheap for writing, not expensive, but reading is very expensive in read. So be careful when you are reading archive. Very important decision. And obviously not only read and write, but also you are going to have cost for list and create containers, which are very few operations. List is to get the list of all blobs which are there in the container. So some kind of get operation on the container has to be performed. A blob is stored in a container. So there also we have got cost. And not only that, you also have cost in terms of the volume of data which is going out or coming into the data center. Most of the time the data write, the volume of data write is free, but read is going to be charged to you again. The volume of data, how many TBs and GBs of data we are reading, based on that also there is cost. So What is important to be noted is cost is not just for the storage. Cost is there for read operation, cost is there for write operation, cost is there for the volume of data which is being read and volume of data which is being written. Though written is free most of the times, we never know when they would change that, but yes, there is a cost for transactions also. This is called as transaction cost. This is called as ingress and egress cost. Ingress is data write, egress is data retrieval. When the data goes out of the data center. So if you have two storage accounts and you are moving data from one storage to the other storage, and if they are in different regions, remember for one data center you are going to have the read cost. Other data center will have the write cost. So write cost is 0, but read cost will be there. And of course, the number of read and write instructions are also going to get built. So this is something very interesting and very important one has to keep in mind and consider at the time of creating a storage account. Rather, you should invest decent amount of time on understanding your requirement, how the data is going to be normalized, how the data is going to be spread across multiple regions. Is it needed, not needed? For example, now you see, if I choose GRS, you will see here, this has doubled. Let me change this to hot. This has doubled. It was 0.5, now it has become 1. From LRS to GRS if I changed. And there is a geo replication data transfer cost also which has come. For 100 GB, 1 TB, we have got $20 as extra cost. So this whole system was actually initially messed up. Even Microsoft will not be able to explain the billing if you go back to them and ask for details of why exactly this has happened. That was not correctly programmed in the background. But now it's all very systematic. They have documented properly. They have made it very clear that there is a charge for GRS, there is a charge for a write operation, there is a charge for transaction and all these things. But initially it was not like that. But we are pretty clear now what is charged and what is not charged. This hot and cold is really confusing. So let us say this is the primary data center and this is the secondary data center. What is happening is our application is writing to primary and primary has to write to secondary. So when we configure this as cool, I'll configure this as hot tier, because I have more read and write operation. I'll configure as hot tier, but secondary is always created as cool. So in a typical situation in the project which I was dealing with, I had millions of read and write operations, and each write and read was few KBs, not even MBs, few KBs. So here the cost was for read and write and for storage, and what they did, because this was cool, the read and write cost here got doubled. Very typical situation of my project, not everybody would have that, but yes, read and write onto hot tier was perfect, no problem. It was cheaper because here I have taken hot. But what Microsoft did, they did this as a cool tier, and that is by default configuration, we cannot change it. So here read and write operation, because every read and write here is also happening here. So here the costing got doubled, and unnecessary the billing got zoomed from $800 to $3,800, literally inflated. In normal circumstances, people don't even bother about it, they just ignore it. But I had an opportunity to look at it, because why suddenly it went in from 800 to 3000, and then I figured out this is all the reason. But this is not acceptable. If this is hot, this should also be hot. Why will they change this to cool? Their argument was because there will not be read and write operations on this, we changed it to cool, which is fair. But problem is, for me they are charging on read and write operations of hot year, which is not fair. I don't know. They never came back to me with the justification, but they just did a refund of all 3,800 and closed the ticket. But you have to keep in mind, this is with me in documented form. In their replies, I have this in documented. And this they don't explain anywhere. Nowhere in Microsoft official documentation they write that primary is hot, then secondary will be cool. They do not document it. So only in my email I have that confirmation. But that also they would probably change it after my ticket, and lot of internal, it got escalated to a very high level actually. All the teams got involved in this particular matter because this was treated as a very special case where few kbs and almost 2 TB of data was written. Few kbs of each file, but 2 TB of data. Just imagine how many read and write operations were there. So be very careful when you are looking at the billing of storage. You have to be, it can go from 800 to 3,800. It can happen with you also. If you're not cautious and if you're not careful, you can be trapped in all this hot, cool, read, write, transaction cost, ingress cost, egress cost. So it is important that you invest decent amount of time in understanding this whole thing before you actually create a storage account. Thank you.